Good morning, everybody. Today, I wanted to take a look at the new set of adjustments coming up with Update 50. The first set is Shadarkai, and the second set, which is the Radiant Servantry, we're going to look at it in a separate video to this one. I wanted to keep them separate just so that you can easily find what you're looking for. So, to get started, Shadarkai is going to be a updated enhancement here. We're going to check out what some of those enhancements are and also some of the reasoning behind it. It was Steel Star that posted this last week, so we're going to take a quick look here and see what's going on. So he says, the first of these two passes is an adjustment to the Shadarkai iconic. Shadarkai don't really have a good niche in most of today's meta, and what they offer is a bit lackluster compared to a lot of other iconics in base races. Like we said above, these passes are fast, so while there are definitely other things we can improve in the future, we aimed for changes that were both fast and would help address the issues above. And then it says, currently the Shadarkai get 2 spike chain attacks, one in tier 1 and one in tier 4 that keeps whirling as long as you stand still. Neither is an actual attack, and they don't use your equipped weapons. The animations don't scale, and you can't move while using them. This made them not very compelling to use. So some of you might have seen my chains video, where I tried to make a Shadarkai and use only the chains. It didn't work for a million reasons. The main reason is that it was this awful attack on a really long cooldown. There was pretty much no incentive to ever make any attempt to use this attack, which is really weird and sad. When you think about Shadarkai, if you've ever encountered them in the Shadowfell or in the Forgotten Realms, just in general, they're mean. Their chain attacks do an extremely high amount of damage, and they're very difficult to overcome sometimes. You can get instantly just popped by their sneak attacks. They're really dangerous, and that's the kind of class fantasy you want when you play a Shadarkai. Problematically, the Shadarkai enhancement tree is really not that good, and on top of that, they also get basically nothing as a base race. So this looks to adjust that and make them a little bit better. So now the question is, did they adjust it and make it better? So, the changes. At level 1, all Shadarkai characters now get a feat spiked chain attack, which means now you don't need to actually put enhancement points into an enhancement tree. If you play a Shadarkai, you just get the spiked chain attack. This is really cool, because it means that every Shadarkai can do it, which makes sense. It's the iconic ability of the Shadarkai. Whip around these spiked chains is something you see them all do in game, and now you can always do that when you're playing, which is fantastic. It uses a light melee weapon, which is required, and it says attack. Using a spiked chain, but the stats from your main hand weapon, perform 3 AoE melee attacks with +1 W, +1 threat range, and +1 critical multiplier. Your Shadarkai racial enhancements may add to this attack. So this is kind of like cleave, but it's triple cleave, and it's +1 threat range and multiplier. Now this actually is really, really impactful. The reason is, it's a light weapon melee attack. So that might sound strange, like why would it even matter that much? Well, it's twofold. First of all, if you're using a light weapon, there's a good chance that you're probably doing like maybe single weapon fighting or 2-weapon fighting, something that likely just isn't going to have any strike through whatsoever. You might be playing a ranger, but probably not. And the second thing is the fact that if you're playing as a character that generally isn't going to get much area of effect, maybe you're playing as a assassin rogue, maybe you're playing as a swashbuckling bard, well, you're probably not taking power attack either, which means there's no cleave or great cleave in your future. This allows you to take your light weapons and just automatically get area of effect. An area of effect that's actually really good because it does extra damage and has extra critical threat range and multiplier. This is a really, really, really good attack. So that's sick. On top of that, you can use it while moving, and apparently it scales with your attack speed. So if you get more attack speed, say you're using, I don't know, single weapon fighting, and you haste yourself, so you're like a bard with 45% higher attack speed, this thing goes 45% faster. So you just can whip around your chain all the time, every 12 seconds. Let's see how you can enhance it. So for starters, there's an enhancement called Vicious Chain, which is now in the tier 1, that says it gives a 33% chance to bleed on each hit of the spike chain. This is going to be largely irrelevant. I don't think you'd ever want to use this. I think you have to take it because there's like a chain, no pun intended, but there's like a linked set of enhancements in the tree. So you'll likely have to take this. You probably will never notice a 33% bleed on each hit because bleed damage is usually irrelevant in the overall context from different abilities unless you're fighting some type of raid boss, which most people aren't doing most of the time. Then you have the Forceful Chain. So now this says that your spike chain attack now has a 5% chance to knock non-boss enemies down with no save for 6 seconds. Every 2 seconds, they make a balance save of 17 plus dex mod plus drip DCs to get back up again. Now, this is an unreliable ability, so 5% is not very often. It is unlikely to go off whenever you use your chain attack. However, remember, it's an area of effect, which means that if you're attacking like 5 targets and you use your spike chain, there's a good chance you're going to knock down 1 target during the spike chain attack. That's not really good odds, and it's not really something that's potent, but it does last for 2 seconds at the very least. The nice thing about this is while it does say it uses your dexterity plus trip DCs to prevent them from getting up, monsters generally have awful balance checks in general, which is why trip can be pretty good and knock targets down for absolute minutes. And on top of that, even if you don't have this, it's still a 2-second knockdown that can interrupt a spellcaster, that can do a whole bunch of stuff. And you can use this while moving, meaning you can kind of just run through packs of enemies knocking people over. So is it the best? Not really, but it is helpful, and it will just surprisingly give you that little bit of edge every once in a while. Also, it says knockdown, which means that it should work against monsters that are classically immune to tripping, like wraiths, oozes, and that sort of thing. Although that will have to be tested once it comes to Lemania or to the live servers. Next is a new ability called Ghastly Chain, which is the new tier 3, and it says when you use your spike chain attack, you gain 5% dodge for 6 seconds. This ignores dodge cap. This is just straight up good. It's not the best ability in the game, but 5% dodge is 5% dodge. There's no downside to this ability, so if you can't afford it, it's not too bad. There's also a new tier 3, which is a displacement spell-like ability. So now Shadarkai can actually be permanently displaced. So this might seem overpowered, but remember, it's going to cost you likely 12 points into your racial enhancement tree to pick up. And so while displacement is extremely good, getting a 50% mischance due to concealment, which is just incredibly useful when monsters do not have access to true seeing, it's important to note that if you are playing as an elf, you can also get this, as elves get it from their dragon mark without having to be a Shadarkai. So while it is pretty good, I imagine unless you have a lot of racial points, it's going to be difficult to fit this one in. Same with some of the other chain attacks, unless you're going deep into the Shadarkai for the chain stuff, at which point you're definitely going to be taking displacement because, well, if you're that far in, you're already taking it. I will say that if you have a lot of racial points on rogues, rangers, other types of characters, I think this could be good. And Shadarkais don't really make very good arcane spellcasters, or at least they haven't in the past, so there hasn't been a lot of arcane spellcaster displacement or builds that go along with this. Who knows? Maybe Eldritch Knight is now going to be super strong with this, and they don't need the displacement, but all in all, this is a very, very good ability. I don't think this is going to be overpowered, just because there are a fair amount of monsters, and especially champions in the higher difficulty, that have true seeing. And additionally, there are some reductions to concealment as you move into Reaper mode, although displacement is still extremely good all the way through Reaper 10, so we'll have to see how this pans out. I have a feeling it might get changed, but maybe not. Alternatively, they could maybe move it into the tier 4, but then the tier 4 just becomes kind of expensive, and you find yourself spending like 23 points in the tree, like you might with a shifter. Next, we have the tier 4 Whirling Chain, which is the ability where you Whirling Chain for literally 20 seconds. It's been changed to Greater Spiked Chain Attack. So it is another chain attack. However, it's plus 3W, so it does even more base damage, plus 2 critical threat range, plus 2 critical multiplier, and if you Vorpal, you knock people down, and has an 18-second cooldown. So it's just Spike Chain 2. Like, it's just better, so you can go Spike Chain 1 into Spike Chain 2, probably kill every single thing in a room, and then move on to the next pack. On Vorpals, it knocks people down. So again, if you're using a single weapon fighting, and you have the perfect single weapon fighting to get a Vorpal on a 19 or 20, you'll be Vorpaling people all the time. 10% chance to knock people down, plus the 5%. That's not quite 15%, but essentially it means that now, in a pack of 5, you're probably going to be knocking down, oh god, with this ability, like 2 targets probably, sometimes even 3, which is pretty sweet. So it's a very, very strong attack. But reminder, this will cost you at least probably 16 or 17 points into your Universal Enhancement tree, or not Universal, into the Shadarkai Enhancement tree. So it's a tough sell, since you usually want to spend points in a lot of the main trees. Like as an example, you may want to say, okay, well, if I'm playing as a rogue, this could be good because I'm playing as an assassin rogue. But assassin rogues usually use daggers, and daggers are very good with Vistani knife fighting. So it's a tough sell. Maybe there's an argument here for a non-dagger assassin rogue. Say you're playing as a Q-Cree assassin, a short sword assassin, then Spiked Chain may be good for you in that type of character where you're focusing more on other different uses of your character, such as the area of effect damage. I mean, AoE assassin rogue literally becomes possible here, and that's very, very interesting. Is that going to be good? I don't know, but I'm definitely going to try it. And then lastly, there's the new Tier 4, Assassin's Mark. Non-boss enemies caught in your Spike Chain attacks have a 33% chance to gain a stack of Dizzying Spiked Chain on each of the 3 hits, which gives minus 10% damage per stack, minus 5% attack speed per stack, minus 2 concentration per stack, which stacks up to 8 times. Basically, this is just the attack that the Shadarkai put on you, and if you've ever gotten to 8 stacks before, because maybe you're just like standing in the Shadarkai, or you're playing on a lower difficulty where the damage doesn't do quite as much, say you're running like Whirling on normal, and you get hit by a bunch of Spike Chain attacks, this really hurts. Minus 80% damage and minus 40% attack speed means you basically do nothing, and it's really annoying to have to deal with, and you have to run around and wait for your stacks to fall off. I don't think that this is going to be good pretty much in any capacity. As it says here, it's pretty strong in practice, but stuff that dies so fast also can accumulate stacks. You're likely going to be killing stuff with a single Spike Chain. That's kind of the expectation, is that if a monster gets hit by all 3, it's dead. So it's likely not going to be able to stack anything. And in R10, probably not going to do anything either. However, weird thing. If you play as a Shadarkai tank, you now get access to the Ghastly Chain for the extra dodge, displacement, and you can use Assassin's Mark with the double Whirling Chain here to pop into a group of monsters and double Whirling Chain them to slow them down. Is that going to be good? I'm going to say probably not, but it is something interesting and something you could consider using if you wanted to. So I think it's going to be quite interesting to look at, although again, I'm not saying this is good. Please don't misconstrue my words. I am making no claim that this will in fact be good as an Assassin's Mark ability. You probably won't even take this Assassin's Mark, but there is some, testing that could be done to verify whether this would work or not. Again, the other issue is that in most groups that you're playing with, especially in a higher Reaper mode or where this actual effect would last because monsters will be alive for long enough, usually things will get fully crowd controlled, so you'll have monsters who are mass held or color sprayed, and in those cases where they're not, say they're a series of constructs, maybe it could be helpful, but even still, a lot of melee damage is getting really out of hand. And so something like you might just have another Shadarkai who's going to Whirling Chain with the greater Spike Chain attack and hit monsters for upwards of 4,000 to 5,000 damage, even in R10. So we'll have to see how that goes. Overall, my impression of the changes is extremely high. I think that Shadarkai is probably not going to become a meta-defining build. I don't think that it is going to be something that you're going to see all of the players all over the place, everyone's swapping to Shadarkai because of how overpowered and broken it is. However, I do think that you will see a lot of people playing Shadarkai now because, one, the Spike Chain attack, which was a cool ability, is actually just sick. It's just so good now, as opposed to being awful before. Now it's something you literally actually want to use, even against a single target you want to Spike Chain them, which is cool. And on top of that, the greater Whirling Chain is worth the investment if you actually either have the points to spare, depending on the type of character you're playing. So overall, I think that this is an extremely good buff for Shadarkai. I think that this is like one of the best outcomes that could have happened out of here. There is still the right half of the tree, which is a little bit disappointing. Sure, getting some sneak attack here and there is okay. There's an ability that gives you an extra d6 cold damage. It's called like cold-blooded or something, and it is horrible, and you should never take it. So there's some things that could be improved. However, with these changes, this will make pretty much every single Shadarkai life that you ever want to do consistent and easy and strong. So Shadarkai, look out. It's going to become very, very good. Think of it kind of like Deep Gnome, in a sense, or Scourge Aasimar, where Scourge Aasimar is very good at what it does, which is dealing damage with maces or just even getting a bunch of extra double strike, or Deep Gnome, which is very good at insta-killing and being a powerful kind of Pale Master crowd control character. Shadarkai is just adds to the access or list of tools that you can get on a light weapon character and will be quite strong. So look forward to playing some Shadarkai. I know I will. I'm definitely going to be playing a lot of Shadarkai after this because having access to an area of effect attack on a character that is either just dual wielding or single weapon fighting but not necessarily going to be having any other AoE, this is exciting. So single weapon fighter Q-Cree Rogue in my future? We'll have to see about that. Anyways, that's all I have for you on this one. If you want to see my thoughts about the Radiant Servant, once the video is up, I'll put a link in the description, or I'll just put a title card right over there, so you'll be able to see that popping up. And if you're like, oh man, I can't wait to see how the Shadarkai is going to pop out. Strimtom, are you going to test this on Lemania when it's up? I absolutely will be testing on Lemania. And if you want to find out and see some of the testing action, please go to twitch.tv/Strimtom to get all that information to see it live, so that way you can know firsthand what some of that stuff is like, possibly even before it comes out. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and I will disappear because the video is fading out.